I've got several YouTube channels. They do okay. I'm also a dickhead. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I feel like I'm at the circus. This episode of Business Blaze is brought to you by the legends at Backblaze. Together we blaze, and you should blaze too. Try Backblaze for 15 days. Just go to backblaze.com/blaze. That is an amazing link, as I've commented before. The blaze, blaze, blaze. Very hard to say. This doesn't actually say what Backblaze does. It's an amazing backup solution. I've used it for years. I've used it before I was a YouTuber, but definitely before I had sponsors. I'll tell you more about them later, but you know, support the show. Get Backblaze. 15-day free trial. Why not? Let's crack on. Oh, also, Danny wrote to me and was like, Simon, this one's extremely lengthy. And I was like, yeah, Danny. I can tell. We're gonna be here for a while. This is not an epic blaze. Don't get too excited. Somehow, the epic blazes, longer content on YouTube doesn't generally do that awesome, but the two most popular videos on this channel are the hour-long videos, and the only reason they don't make more is because, you know, they're 3 times as long, so I pay Danny 3 times as much, I pay Sam 3 times as much, it takes me 3 times as long, and they just make the same amount of money, so I'm like... No. If this channel had that subscription thing where you pay like $5 a month, but this sounds so expensive, this isn't worth it, I don't want to do it already.
I don't want to do it. I want to go home. Like, I can't take the pressure of it.
Because Netflix is like, what, $10 a month, $12 a month, and you get all the unlimited content in the world, and then I'm like, yeah, for $5 a month, I'll give you 1 hour of extra content a month. That doesn't seem like a good deal. If that does seem like a good deal, overwhelm me with comments, and I'll do it. If not, I'm not going to, because like the stickers at purchasethemerch.co, don't waste your money. It took me a while. Oh, this is 3 massive frauds. Jesus, Danny, these must be massive because this script is like 10 pages.
Danny, what the fuck, man?
3 massive frauds. Let's do it, allegedly. It took me a while, but I've just finished researching and writing an epic length script, which weaves the inspirational business story of a charming man called the Tarquin Trotter, abandoned in a pigsty as a baby. And Danny, I didn't pay you to write this, did I? Because I'm very worried that I paid you to write this. Abandoned in a pigsty as a baby and later sent to a strict boarding school for behaviorally challenged orphans, Tarquin's first job after leaving school was sweeping up the cigarette ends and heroin needles from outside the local job center. But after attending business evening classes and watching repeats of The Apprentice on a old flickery black and white television in a shared bedsit, Tarquin went on to launch a small business selling custom-made bandanas and winter vests for farm pigs. What the fuck is going on, Danny? I'm so confused! From such humble roots, Tarquin went on to forge a mighty business empire based on transparency, excellent pig-based products, decency, customer value, and good wages for hordes of hardworking individuals who were proud to work for his company. Danny, it sounds like you need to go work for him, doesn't it, mate? Because none of these things I provide. Decency, no. Customer value, look, you be the judge, but no. Good wages, no. Hardworking individuals, Danny works pretty hard. I'll give him that. Although he was raking in billions of dollars every year, he lived a modest life in a rented caravan on a field next to a pig farm, and gave away all his wealth to charitable organizations fighting homelessness and poverty and hunger. You're a better man than me, Tarquin. Oh god, those stickers, they're so expensive. The story has a slightly tragic ending, as he ended up dying very young after contracting a particularly bad case of swine influenza, also known as pig flu. But there are plenty of motivational moments to cover over the course of 6,000 words. Oh my god, 6,000 words! And I'm adding 6,000 of my own words. Sometimes people often ask me like, Simon, how do you make so much stuff? And I'm like, well, I don't record every individually. Look, a minute ago, I just finished the most overpriced products. I stand up and I record 2 or 3 at once. And then for another channel, I recorded 4 geographics videos yesterday. And then I look at how many words I've recorded. Well, some days I'll record like 40,000 words. And I'm like, that's like half a book, Jesus Christ. I am a machine. Robot sent from the future. I've just remembered this is Business Blaze and we don't really want to hear about any of that muck. So, as a last minute alternative, here are 3 more cases involving filthy fraudsters who were grimly determined to get more than their fair share from the business trough. Bearing in mind that so many of our recent fraud stories seem to involve Nigerians, I'm just hopeful that we can avoid any mention of Nigeria in this particular video. I've just hired a new writer, Mike, for another channel I'm working on, coming soon, and he's from Nigeria. And I was like, what? So I go to pay him, And I'm like, yeah, just pay through like PayPal or TransferWise and Revolut. And he's like, Simon, I've got some bad news. In Nigeria, they don't allow PayPal or TransferWise or Revolut. Oh no, maybe they allow TransferWise. And he's like, you have to pay me through Payoneer. So I get set up with Payoneer and it's the enormous pain in the ass. Because I think they just assume that if someone's sending money to Nigeria that they're getting scammed. I'm like, I just want to pay Mike. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. It took me like 2 weeks to pay you.
I'm going to let Mark punch me one time in the face. That's how I'm going to say sorry.
What are we talking about? The Invisible Airport. The Nigerian fraud artist Emmanuel, Nwude, maybe, once held down a fairly respectable job as the director of the Union Bank of Nigeria before he decided to give it all up and get into the trickier business of selling investment in invisible Nigerian airports. Wait, Danny, come on. Come on! The victim was the allegedly shrewd and risk-taking banking director of Brazil's Banco do Nordeste. I don't know why it's Italian. In 1985, Nelson Sakaguchi received a fax which purported to be from the Central Bank of Nigeria, who were looking for investors in a proposed new airport. On fax paper, it probably sounded like quite a credible project. Just a few years earlier, the Nigerian government had shifted the capital of the country from Lagos to Abuja. I'll ask Mike. And now it seemed like a good idea to build a major new airport for the new capital, bearing in mind that it was now the fastest growing city in the most populous country in Africa. It just made perfect sense. Shrewd Brazilian bank director Nelson agreed to meet up in a swanky hotel room in London with the director of the Central Bank of Nigeria, a guy who introduced himself as Paul Ogowuma. Don't these meetings occur in like embassy? It's like, yeah, you're gonna meet up with the director of the central bank. We're gonna do it at this random hotel. And I'm already like, oh god, there's gonna be cocaine, isn't there? There's gonna be bags of money, allegedly. He had a proper business card and everything. Yeah, because those can't be faked. In fact, Paul was none other than the now unemployed Emmanuel Nwude, who appeared to have fooled the cunning director of the Banco de Nordeste by just having a few business cards knocked up by Vistaprint. Vistaprint. Anyone? I don't know if they still do it, but whenever I used to order something off Amazon, it would come with a Vistaprint like printout inside, being like, hey, you want some free business cards? And I'm like, yeah, I want some free business cards, Vistaprint. I mean, I'm 14 years old and I just ordered a game, but sure, if they're free, and I go onto Vistaprint's website, and you enter all your details, and they're like, oh yeah, you want more than your name on there? That's gonna be like $80. It's like, what? And you're like, okay, well, I'll do the cheapest one possible. I'll just have my name. And they're like, yeah, delivery takes 28 days. And it's $400. I'm exaggerating, but that's how they get you, allegedly. I've got a fun story about, oh god, this is gonna go on forever. Maybe I've told this story before, but as a student, it was about an hour's drive from where my parents lived to where I went to university. So I'd go like back home and visit on the weekend, and I'd stop off on this service station, like a gas station or whatever, but with a McDonald's on the way home. And they had one of those machines that prints business cards. And every time I'd stop there and I'd print myself some new business cards for £3. And I'd just put like fake job titles on there. So first of all, I had like professional legend, which is where the legend joke originally came from, why I refer to you all as legends. And then I had one that said hero/legend. And then I had one that said professional party guest for a long time. And I just hand them out to random people. And the professional party guest one was the best one because people were like, really? And I'm like, no, I'm not that entertaining. But that'd be an epic job. It was from The Sims. It used to be a job in The Sims. To be fair, Emmanuel's time working at the Union Bank of Nigeria had also given him access to confidential information which helped his scam appear a bit more plausible. He claimed he was looking for around $242 million in investment from Nelson's bank, and in return, Nelson would personally get around $10 million in commission after the airport was built. This smells like a scam. Allegedly. Nelson was asked to just be a little bit discreet about the deal and maybe not bother telling anyone else at the Brazilian bank. So Nelson agreed to stump up $191 million of the bank's money in cash. I mean, I'm sure it's a wire transfer, but that implies that it's not going back. And then secretly transferred the rest in smaller, less suspicious packages over the next 3 years. It's quite remarkable that even after 3 years had passed, he was still trying to funnel millions of dollars to Emmanuel, despite the fact that he can't help have noticed that there didn't yet appear to be any signs of a new airport. Not even so much as a runway or a little coffee shop. And it's equally remarkable that he managed to invest the full $242 million into the invisible airport without anybody else at Banco de de Nord-Est, noticing that the funds had gone missing, despite the fact that this investment amounted to 2/5 of the bank's entire value. Tell you where I'm not going to bank. By 1998, the Spanish bank Santander were interested in taking over Banco de Nord-Este, and they naturally fancied having a bit of a go through the books. Although this prompted increasingly desperate excuses from the usually calm and calculating Nelson, he eventually had to hand them over, at which point everyone seemed to wake up from their slumber and notice for the first time that 2/5 of the bank's capital had been squirreled away to an undisclosed private account somewhere in the Cayman Islands. It's not entirely clear what happened to poor old Nelson, although as far as I can make out, he was last seen awaiting trial on charges of conspiracy. The wealthy owners of Banco de Nord-Este were forced to dip into their own pocket to cover the $242 million loss. Bloody hell. I don't think wealthy owners of the bank quite qualifies it there, like ultra rich. To keep Santander sweet for the takeover, although the Brazilian bank collapsed a few years later anyway. Meanwhile, Emmanuel Nuede and his associates were eventually put on trial in the Abuja High Court in 2004, where they faced 15 counts of bribery and 86 counts of fraudulently seeking advance fees. Fortunately for the accused, the judge ultimately ruled that as the alleged crime had not happened in Abuja, he had no jurisdiction on the matter, and the case should have been overseen in the Lagos High Court. Unfortunately for the accused, as soon as they stepped out of the courthouse, they were rearrested and the case was moved to Lagos. The retrial wasn't without incident. As well as a bomb scare causing an emergency evacuation of the courthouse and a slight pesky delay, Emmanuel was also found to have attempted to bribe the head of the commission with $75,000 in cash and to have orchestrated the attempted kidnapping of a key witness. Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, you've stolen, what, $190 million? A little bit of bribery and kidnapping is... I mean, kidnapping seems... No, these are all criminal crime. You're going to prison for a long time. Whatever happens, you may as well just embrace it. Also, $75,000 when you took $190 million seems like the bribe was a bit too low. Not that I'm suggesting that's a good idea in any way whatsoever. No, I'm seriously not. Don't bribe people. He eventually pled guilty to all charges in the hope of receiving a lenient sentence, and he got one. Oh, although he technically got served with 25 years of prison time, they were dished out as 5 concurrent terms to be served at the same time, so he was released within just a couple of years. If this was America, they'd have given him the lethal injection. Although he technically, all of his assets had been seized as part of the conviction, but Emmanuel managed to get back $167 million worth of them on the grounds that they were seized before his offense was committed. Wait, so he got the money back? What? However, he's back behind bars now, currently awaiting trial for his alleged role as a ringleader of a terrorist attack over a land dispute which resulted in the death of a security guard and the shooting of 4 policemen. Oh my god, dude, what is wrong with you? If I was Emmanuel, whatever his name is, I'd be like, bro, you committed a crime, you went to prison for 5 years, and you got $167 million out of it? I'd be like, bro, you made out like a bandit. Don't be a terrorist. Just chill out. Buy an island or something.
Daddy, chill.
The Invisible Airport saga has not only gone down as the 3rd largest banking scam in history after Nick Leeson's losses at Barings Bank and the looting of the Iraqi central bank, it was also perhaps the most ambitious and lucrative variation of the old Nigerian prince advanced fee scam. Okay, this one is so huge that I'm kind of like, yeah, Emmanuel was a bad dude, but also mad props. Also, mad props, but a very different sort of non-criminal props to today's legendary sponsor, Backblaze. I'm going to tell you a bit about them. Don't skip this ad. I can feel you. I can sense you reaching for that skip button. But remember, this is Business Blaze. I do try hard to make the ads as entertaining as the content itself. So I'm just going to read some ad copy. The best way to back up all of your files is with Backblaze. As you guys know, I like to try the sponsors that we have on this show, and indeed today's sponsor I'm using. Oh yeah, okay. I'll just talk about it. I use Backblaze. I got a computer about 2 meters away from me right now, and whenever I finish recording a video, I hit stop on the computer, and all of my hard disks are just automatically synced with Backblaze's servers. So you know, I used to like have to burn to DVDs and all of this stuff. Now it's like I don't even think about backing stuff up. It just automatically backs up all the time. The only issue, and I'm not sure I should talk about issues, the only issue that I have with Backblaze is occasionally it pops up and says, Simon, we have to stop your backup because your hard disk is full. And I'm like, okay, well that's not really their fault, and I have to buy a new hard disk, which I plug in, and then I tick the little box, and it's like, yeah, upload that one to Backblaze's servers as well. And it all just happens overnight. I just leave my computer running all the time. It syncs all the files. It is glorious. Backblaze asked me not to tell you how much data I back up, but let's just say it's a lot. And this doesn't seem to be any fair use policy issues, because if there was, I would definitely be bumping up against them. So you can back up as much as you want. Don't worry about it. There's no way you back up as much as me. I make like 50 gigabytes of data a day. Okay, now I have to tell you things about it, for real, that they actually want me to talk about. Okay, so yeah, when it goes wrong, like if you get a hard disk failure or something, they either ship you out a hard disk, and it's got all your data on there, and it's all encrypted and so you don't have to worry about, the UPS man stealing your data. Goddamn pirates! No one's stealing the data because it's encrypted. And I'm sure it's like, I don't know, people always say like military-grade encryption. Look, whatever, no one's cracking that shit. And then it arrives, and then you can either keep the hard disk and pay them for it, or you can take the data and ship the hard disk back. It's all good. Or if you've got a mad fast internet connection like your boy with the Blaze, you just download it all. And it's really fast. It's amazing. This ad is going on way too long because I'm telling you about all this cool stuff that I've discovered with Backblaze over the years, but you can set up how many threads, which is like individual internet connections or something, to their servers. So it can normally when you're downloading something, it doesn't really max out your internet connection. You can tell Backblaze, yeah, I want to use I can't remember how it is, but 30 threads to back up the data. And it's it makes your internet hella slow, but it backs up mad fast. So I do that at night. And you get a 15-day free trial to try it out, so you can see that all of the stuff I'm telling you is actually true and awesome and totally blazing. Just go to backblaze.com/blaze. I hope I don't have to redo this ad. Yes, I just go so off point. Let's get back to it. The Portugal banknote affair. During a short spell in the slammer, I imagine many convicts use the time spent in forced incarceration to reflect on their wrongdoings, consider a fresh path for the future, and maybe even find Jesus. I was reading the news this morning, and it's what's that guy, Trump's lawyer, who went to prison for campaign finance violations for 2 years or whatever. And it's he's released from prison and he immediately publishes a book. And I'm like, you should have thought about this, because he's going to go to prison. What do you think he's going to do in there? He's in Club Fed or whatever. He's not in rapey prison. What's he going to do? He's an intelligent lawyer. He's going to write a book. And his book is probably not going to be very flattering of the man who sent him to prison, the president. And so he releases an absolutely slamming book of Trump, and slamming in a bad way, not a good way. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. But in the case of Portuguese criminal Arthur Virgilio Alves Rice, his short spell in prison in 1924 just proved to be a handy backdrop to plan out his next coming scheme. And it was going to be a biggie. In fact, it would go down as one of the largest frauds in history. Arthur's life had been far from the straight and narrow. He picked up a job at the then Portuguese colony of Angola as a government railroad inspector, but only after forging an engineer's diploma from Oxford. Well, I guess if you're going to forge something, it may as well be from Oxford. Following this, he had decided to try and take over the Royal Trans-Africa Railway Company of Angola, but only after forging $100,000 worth of checks to cover costs. Oh my god, dude. And it was this scam which had earned him a prison sentence for embezzlement in 1924, although he only served a couple of months after a court decided that it was a civil and not a criminal case. Boy, that sounds like a criminal case, allegedly, doesn't it? I mean, forging checks, I'm pretty sure that's a crime. A criminal crime, not a civil crime. Having not yet turned 30 years old, a freshly freed Arthur turned his attention to his next thrilling scheme, which involved the printing of $1 million worth of escudo notes. It's often claimed that the Portuguese banknote affair was one of the biggest counterfeit money schemes ever to be orchestrated, but ultimately, this was not strictly true at all. The beauty of Arthur's master plan was that he wasn't printing fake money. He managed to oversee the printing of perfectly authentic money, just without any legal authority to do so. That's amazing. I once tried printing money using my computer printer, because I was playing... I won't tell the story because we're already way too deep into my stories. I'll tell it another day, but it was part of a very elaborate prank on a friend of mine, and I needed to have a large amount of fake money. And so I tried printing out notes on the computer, and the printer just refuses to print them. It prints the first little bit, and then it's you're trying to print money, son. Not happening. Which was interesting. I said I wasn't going to get into the story, so I'm not going to. Back in the 1920s, the Bank of Portugal had the exclusive authority to print Portuguese currency, but the bank often hired international printing companies for the actual production of the notes so that the currency could be printed with superior anti-counterfeiting technology. One of these third parties was a respected English printing company called Waterloo & Sons, who were responsible for producing the 50 and 1,000 escudo notes. One day, in 1924, Waterloo & Sons was approached by a consortium of people led by the mastermind Arthur Virgilio Alves I don't know, who claimed to be representatives from both the Portuguese government and the Bank of Portugal. The consortium claimed that they required a new printing order for 100 million escudos, which would be used to help develop the growing Portuguese colony of Angola. In return, Waterloo and Sons would receive a fee of 7,200 escudos. They print 100 million of them, and they get 7,200. I guess, I don't know, is that a lot of money? It doesn't seem like a lot of money. Anyway, the consortium probably looked very convincing. I suspect, do you think they're just like, yeah, just take it off the top, guys? The consortium probably looked very convincing. I suspect they'd been to Vistaprint too. Presented with a wealth of forged documentation and not bothering to make a quick phone call to anyone else in the Portuguese government or the bank, Waterloo and Sons happily took the fee of 7,200 escudos and went about printing the first order with a value of 5 million. I say first order because the operation was deemed to be so successful that the crooked consortium quickly followed it up with another order of 190 million escudos. Of course they would. They'd be like, oh my god, I can't believe this worked. Guys, can you print us, what is that, 40 times as many? I'd just be like, no worries. In total, this would have been worth $15 million at the time, or about $221 million today, give or take several million. These things are a headache to work out, okie dokie. Maybe alarm bells should have started ringing at Waterloo and Sons when they were asked to duplicate existing serial numbers rather than create new ones. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we know what serial numbers are for. They're unique identifiers. From Arthur's perspective, serial numbers that fell outside of the existing range could clearly have been identified as illegal, so he had to take the smaller calculated risk of producing duplicate serial numbers of notes that already existed, as it would be very unlikely anyone would ever spot this. He got around this strange request by informing the printers that the notes were destined for colonial circulation only in Angola, and that the word Angola would be overprinted on the new notes once they had reached their destination to differentiate them from the original notes. That is actually pretty smart. And Waterloo and Sons fell for it. The amount of notes they printed ended up being equivalent to nearly 1% of Portugal's entire GDP. Oh my god. These frauds are incredible! In a bad way. Arthur and his buddies initially laundered some of the new money through taxi fleets and farms, but he eventually decided that the best way of getting all of these new notes into circulation would be just to start his own bank. These guys are so bold in their criminal activities. How is there not a movie about this yet? Maybe there is, let me know. I'd love it. Following a few more crooked deals and bribes, he launched Bank of Angola and Metropole in 1925, which offered some pretty amazing deals on low-interest loans and high-interest savings. But here was Arthur's final masterstroke. He plans on raising enough funds to buy shares to take over the Bank of Portugal, the only institution which he reckons was still capable of detecting the fraud. This is genius. Once he'd taken over the bank, Arthur could create backdated documents which would ensure that the original order placed at Waterloo and Sons was perfectly legit and no crime had ever been committed in the first place. And he very nearly got there too. By November I'm not even adding my own commentary now because this is the best story I think I've ever read on Business Place. By November 1925, he owned over 10,000 shares in the Bank of Portugal and reckons that he was only another month away from becoming the majority shareholder. However, there were problems emerging from his own bank. It was arousing suspicion from authorities as many of the deals seemed to be either too good to be true or downright unprofitable. Following an official investigation into the bank's deposits, notes with duplicate numbers were discovered for the first time, largely by pure chance, and the scheme began to unravel when the Bank of Portugal decided to make a quick phone call to Waterloo and Sons. Arthur was arrested while on board the ship Adolf Werman, which was headed to Angola. Come on, you gotta have your own massive boat by now, dude. His scheme had been so effective that it was initially suspected that government officials or representatives from the Bank of Portugal must surely have been in on the scam, and the trial dragged out for 5 years. In 1930, Arthur was ultimately found guilty of falsely introducing banknotes into Portugal and sentenced to 20 years in prison. During his time in the slammer, this is a long time ago. During his time in the slammer, the compulsive forger had to go at falsifying documents to try and imply that the Bank of Portugal had been involved in the fraud all along, but this fell flat. He was released after serving 15 years and spent the last 10 years of his life in poverty, despite being quite incredibly offered another job in banking which he turned down. I'm not surprised he was offered a job in banking. If I was in it's like the Catch Me If You Can thing. That Frank Abagnale dude, he gets out of prison, he's gonna have a job waiting for him, or even early release from prison, because he's an absolute wizard. Arthur was buried in a pauper's grave, wrapped in a bedsheet, so that his son could inherit Arthur's only suit and wear it for the funeral. If that's true, that's so depressing. The president of Waterloo and Sons, Sir William Waterloo, was dismissed from his company due to his ineptitude in the scandal, but he probably didn't mind too much as he ended up getting elected as Lord Mayor of London instead in 1929. This is so fun. But the biggest casualty in all of this mess was Portugal. Yeah, no surprise. like introducing like 1% of fake currency or a fake currency is of your GDP is going to mess things up. As there was no way to differentiate the original notes and the new unauthorized ones, the government had no option to take all 500 escudo notes out of circulation, creating a national panic and a crisis of faith in Portugal's government and financial institutions. As there should be, to be honest. Although there were other factors at play, the Portuguese banknote affair certainly played a key role in the collapse of the Portuguese Republic in 1926, falling to the fascist dictatorship of Salazar, who would remain in power until 1968. Oh my god, I just realized I know nothing about that. I'm like, who's Salazar? I know nothing about the history of Portugal. So the next time you're thinking of forging an engineer's diploma to try and wrangle a good job, just stop to consider the wider implications of what you're doing. I'm impressed, dude. I'm impressed. The fat fraudster. On the 5th of November 1991, a rich, grumpy old fat man fell off his big expensive yacht and drowned. Okay. Ordinarily, this might not have made the headlines, were it not for the fact that the man in question was Robert Maxwell, and had spent much of his life publishing the headlines. I suppose he was kind of like a UK version of Rupert Murdoch. Is Rupert Murdoch American? Oh, he's Australian, of course he is. Ah, yeah, I'm so dumb. He's like Rupert Murdoch in that he was incredibly rich and successful and hated by a large chunk of the population, allegedly. But at the time of his mysterious death at the age of 68, he was certainly not considered to be a crook. And unlike Murdoch, he came from a background of poverty before fighting his way to the top. Born in 1923 in the Czechoslovak mountain village of Slatenské Doly, his birth name was Jan Ludwig Hyman Benjamin Hoch. He was one of 7 children of Jewish parents. He reckons that he didn't even have a pair of shoes until he was 7 years old. During the Nazi occupation, he fled to France, but lost his parents and 4 of his siblings to the horrors of the Holocaust. He was eventually evacuated to the UK and joined the British Army in the 1940s, where his heroism in storming a German machine gun nest was rewarded with a military cross presented to him by Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery. So far, he's doing well. I mean, other than his family dying in the Holocaust, but I mean, he's doing well considering this. It was around this time that he became a UK citizen and changed his name to the slightly catchier Robert Maxwell. So, Simon should be quite relieved that he won't have to say Jan Ludwig Hyman Benjamin Hoch again. It's no problem, Danny. It's no problem at all, actually. Mastered. I probably got it wrong. He later got into publishing academic and scientific papers before acquiring his first publishing company in 1951, which he named Pergamon Press. I feel like I've heard of that. From humble beginnings, this company had grown into a major publishing house by the 1960s. It was also during this decade that Robert turned his attention towards politics, running for election as a member of parliament for the Labour Party. He won a seat in 1964, was re-elected in 1966, and it was while serving time in parliament that he first showed surprising signs of his staunch feminism by refusing to employ male assistants. He once said, "I can't get on with men. I've tried having male assistants at first, but it didn't work. They tend to be too independent. Men like to have individuality. Women can become an extension of the boss." Yeah. Feminism. Dude, this is like some 1960s feminism right there. I mean, from a man. It's like some Mad Men feminism. I'm a feminist. I gave a woman a job as my secretary. He would lose his seat to the Conservatives in 1970 and failed in his attempt to win it back in 1974 before giving up on the idea. In fact, the 1970s weren't the best years for Robert Maxwell. He was found to have contrived the share price of his Pergamon Press company in a bid to make it more profitable by processing dodgy transactions between some of his other private companies. Uh-oh. Dealing in Pergamon shares was suspended on the stock market, and Maxwell got booted off the board of his own company. An inquiry from the Department of Trade and Industry later declared, "We regret having to conclude that notwithstanding Mr. Maxwell's acknowledged abilities and energy, he is not, in our opinion, a person that can be relied on to exercise proper stewardship of a publicly quoted company." However, the man nicknamed the Bouncing Check by satirical news magazine Private Eye certainly bounced back in the 1980s. Not only did he regain control of Pergamon, he acquired Mirror Group newspapers in 1984, definitely out of those, responsible for the sensationalist tabloid tat, the Daily Mirror. Daily Mirror is so bad. I've mentioned it before, I used to work in the newsagents, and you can just rate the newspapers on how they are, or like, you know, how unpleasant. I mean, the Daily Express is unquestionably the worst, because it's basically what exists to make you feel like, only British people will understand this, but there's a paper called the Daily Mail, which is a piece of shit. And then there's the Daily Express, which only exists to make people who buy the Daily Mail feel okay about buying the Daily Mail, because it makes you feel like less of a racist. Mash that dislike button. By the end of the decade, he had and the Daily Mirror is just, the Daily Mirror is like, it's just tabloid bullshit. I mean, just, you know, gossip rag. By the end of the decade, he had re-established himself as a media tycoon billionaire with a mighty empire, including dozens of best-selling newspapers around the globe, a record label, a football club, a software label, a cable TV service, and over 50% of MTV in Europe. My God, that is a portfolio. it must be said. But despite his success, he was never really popular or likable. Well, these things don't go hand in hand, do they? I've got several YouTube channels. They do okay. I'm also a dickhead. True that it can be hard to maintain popularity with the general public when you're blatantly living a lavish lifestyle of private jets, Rolls Royces, helicopters, and $15 million yachts. Best not mention that yacht again, just yet. Okay, Danny, this must be going somewhere. He probably fell off it and drowned. Spoiler alert. But Robert Maxwell was often described as an intimidating, bombastic bully by everyone who ever crossed his path. During an attempt to make an authorized film based on his story, the director remembered cautiously approaching Maxwell during the research process with a problem. He literally couldn't find anybody in the universe with anything positive to say about it. Oh no. Maxwell didn't seem to be faintly surprised by this news. Even Maxwell's own family don't mince their words. In her autobiography, his wife of 46 years described him as bullying, unfaithful, and frequently absent. His stepdaughter dubbed him the fat fraudster, while other children recall harrowing times at the dinner table when they would be screamed at and caned if they dared to present a school report that wasn't 100% perfect. Bloody hell. So there was quite a mixed reaction when he fell off his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine in 1991, and drowned, just as there probably would be if Rupert Murdoch fell into a pit of snakes and managed to climb his way out, only to get trampled to death by a herd of rampant wildebeest. No comment. But yeah. The newsreader would have to keep a solemn face, but you can imagine some sniggering on the other side of the TV set. Yes, you could. The media was generally very polite. After all, this man was no criminal. Many of the press headlines were quite gushing in their tributes to the man who saved the Mirror, particularly in the papers that Maxwell used to own. What a surprise. I mean, if you're a dick, I suppose you could put out a good image by owning everything that can say anything. But the headlines quickly changed their tune a few weeks later when it turned out this man was a criminal after all. We knew it, it's a fraudster thing, so it's happening, and this is where. Maxwell's fortunes had started to wane again by the end of the 1980s. He'd been forced to sell parts of Pergamon and float shares in Mirror Group newspapers, but his empire was still close to collapse. Considering the last two insane frauds, and this is the third one, some crazy shit's gotta go down, right? And some crazy shit, people in the comments are gonna be like, Simon, have you never heard of this? I don't know. I don't care. But his empire was still close to collapse. Ideally, he needed £400 million to help prop things up, but he didn't have it. So he decided to steal it from the Daily Mirror's pension funds. Oh no, that's not a good thing. Maxwell's death had naturally prompted a good look through the books of his companies, and it was at this point that it became apparent that there was a giant £460 million hole in the pension pot designed to be distributed to the thousands of faithful employees who had been paying into it for years. How is that even possible? Surely that's got to be locked away in some, separate company with, a person who's actually got ethics overseeing it. They probably had to change the law after this. That's probably why we do have that these days. If we do, if we don't, what the f***'s going on? Fix that shit, government. The eyes of the press turned to Maxwell's sons, Kevin and Ian, who were now trying to salvage what they could from the wreckage while hiding from the glare of the media. One day, after hearing yet another early morning knock on the door, Kevin's agitated wife angrily threw open a bedroom window and shouted, "Piss off, or I'll call the police." The reply from the ground was unexpected. We are the police. Uh-oh. Although the brothers faced trial for conspiracy to defraud, they were both unanimously acquitted in 1996. It was ultimately the British taxpayer who helped cover much of the theft, although most of the employees were still only ended up with about half of their promised pension entitlement. Wait, so the government made up the pot? I don't know if that's right. Is it? I don't know. It's interesting to ponder that the grand theft may have gone unnoticed for several more years had Robert Maxwell not slipped off that boat and drowned. It's also a great pity that Maxwell escaped justice during his lifetime and were denied the spectacle of the trial of Robert Maxwell. Well, just see him as trial by popular opinion in the media and, of course, many decades later on business plays. But there has been no shortage of theories regarding the mysterious circumstances of his death. After all, falling off your own boat seems a little bit careless. Some say that he faked his own death and is currently living on a private tropical island, but his body was found and officially identified. He is super rich, though. I mean, maybe he found a body double, killed him, and then escaped for himself. I don't know. Others suggest probably not. Probably not. Let's not get into conspiracy theories, or I'll get demonetized. Others suggest that Maxwell was actually either a double agent or a triple agent for a foreign government, and that he was assassinated by the Israeli National Intelligence Agency, Mossad, when they became worried their activities were about to be exposed. All the intelligence agencies get up to some crazy shit, and Mossad often comes up as one of the craziest, but it's like, this seems a bit much, doesn't it, boys? Even the UK Foreign Office officially declared Maxwell to be a thoroughly bad character and almost certainly financed by Russia. Oh my god, this was going on in the 90s. Even today, it's like f***ing Russia, right? What are you up to? A more popular theory is that he was aware that the shit about to hit the fan, and so he deliberately jumped off the boat to avoid public disgrace and prison. But the Mirror's senior photographer, Ken Lennox, doesn't buy into that. He says Robert used to get up at night and pee over the stern of the ship. Everybody knew this, and he weighed about 22 stone, 140 kilograms at the time. The railings were wire, so I think he lost his balance because he was very top-heavy. Appropriately, his final act was to grumpily complain about air conditioning. He phoned the bridge to moan that his cabin was too hot and demanded the air conditioning be turned on. About 20 minutes later, he phoned again to say that he was now too cold. You're such a dick, Robbo. Just prior to the exposure of the scandal, Maxwell was accorded something approaching a state funeral in Israel and was buried on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. I'm not entirely sure why a British citizen born in Czechoslovakia had a funeral in Israel, but I don't make the rules. If only they'd buried him in Nigeria, I could have recommended a really good airport for the transportation of the body.
Yeah, boy.
This has been Business Blaze, sponsored by Backblaze, backblaze.com/blaze. Check it out below. Also, purchase the merch if you'd like to purchase the merch. Keep calm, blaze on. Thank you for watching. No comments. But yeah.